Hey, everybody. Welcome to Common Good Conversations, a podcast hosted by Vote Common Good. My name is Nick Brock, and next to me is
Shawn Skinner.
Shawn Skinner. Now, we're doing this podcast to talk about all things politics in Ottawa County and Kent County. And we're hoping to talk about faith and politics and all good stories. And we do that by talking with local faith leaders, elected officials, political candidates, subject matter experts, activists, and the like. Anything who's got anything interesting to say and who we want to have a conversation with. So that's what we're doing this morning. Shawn, do you want to add anything?
I think you covered all the bases.
All right.
I think you covered them all.
I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah.
I think. Let me just give a brief background here as to why Shawn is with me. So Shawn and I started having conversations about 2 or 3 years ago at family functions. It really, so I was going to say, so my wife is
my wife's sister.
Yes. So we are related. So at family functions, we would slowly and surely have these conversations about politics over
a couple of glasses of whiskey.
Yeah. And they just started to gradually increase and become better and a little more nuanced, really. And then just over this past summer, I was like, hey, Shawn, I think, we're having some really interesting conversations, and I think we're doing it in a cool way. What do you think about starting a podcast?
And I said, I got all this stuff to do it, so let's do it.
Yeah, so we are here. We are geared up and ready to go. And so with us this morning, we want to talk about the topic of what happened to my local Republican Party. So speaking to that end, we have Becky Steele, a Georgetown Township Trustee who is a Republican, and then Roger Bergman, an Ottawa County Commissioner who is also a Republican as well. So Becky, why don't you first give a little intro into who you are, and then Roger, you can follow up Becky with that question. Just a little introduction.
Sure. Hi, my name is Becky Steele. I am an elected trustee in Georgetown Township, and I'm also a public school teacher. I am a mom of 3. I am jumping back to political, I'm nearing the end of my second term in Georgetown Township. So I've been serving the residents of Georgetown for the last 7 years. On the township board. The township board in Georgetown is 7 people. It's up for re-election every 4 years, concurrent with presidential elections. And so coming up in 2024, our whole board will be up for re-election. We have a supervisor, clerk, and treasurer, and then 4 trustees, of which I am one. So that's me.
All right. Roger?
All right. So I am Ottawa County Board of Commissioner for the 10th District, which includes most of Northwest Ottawa County. So I've been on the board this is my 11th year, so my 6th 2-year term I'm in. Prior to that, I served 12 years on Grand Haven City Council, the last 8 years as the mayor of Grand Haven. My background is shoe retailing, and I never wanted to get into politics. But here I am today in the midst of chaos in our county.
Never wanted to get into politics, but
sounds familiar.
Here you are. Let's dig into that a little bit. And this is really open for you, Becky, and Roger, whoever wants to lead on this first. But so not really anticipating or thinking that you would be in politics. Why then are you a Republican? When you entered and put your name, filed the petition to do so, you had to check a box as anybody who runs for office. There's just nothing to do there. I mean, it's an R or a D or independent, right? So why, when you first did your campaign and ran for office, why did you choose to be a Republican?
Go ahead, Becky.
Um, honestly, when I decided to run for Georgetown Township Trustee the first time, I couldn't believe that local governance was a partisan thing. When I went into the Fillmore complex to file all of my paperwork, and they said, "Well, are you going to run as a Republican or a Democrat?" I kind of looked at them crazy, like I have to do that piece to talk about parks and cemeteries and roads and sidewalks and senior centers and libraries, like things that are local. It didn't seem super partisan to me. But the bottom line is, I was raised in the Catholic Church. I have some very strong pro-life feelings. And I think that I'm focused on good, strong family values and lots of what I feel like were beliefs that align with the Republican Party. I certainly consider myself more moderate than what the Republican Party is looking like these days. Certainly more centrist, but ultimately, when it came down to checking one of the boxes, that's where I kind of felt like I aligned the best.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Roger.
So it's interesting when Becky talked about why is it partisan. The beauty of it is when I first got in, I didn't have to declare myself as a Republican or a Democrat because Grand Haven City Council is nonpartisan. So for the first 12 years, I was just this moderate person on the city council that was very well known. And so when I ran for the county board, I had to declare, and I knew that Ottawa County is a Republican county. If I wanted to be elected, I needed to run as a Republican. And to be very honest, I had been involved with Mr. Reichart, Field Reichart, since the 80s in Ottawa County Republican Party, initially starting out small, and then I kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. But then we got involved right away when I became a commissioner because all the commissioners were automatically on the executive board of the Ottawa County Republican Party. So we all went up until, so this was 2012. And I would say that probably 2015, it was probably 2015, 14 is when it started to change. The party started to change. The dynamics, the makeup of the party, and the control started to change because of the whole thing with the Patriots came on. This further right group, and then of course the whole thing with Trump, and Trump just won over so many people that started to change the whole dynamics of the Republican Party. And so slowly on, what happened is it so I can keep going? Want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
No, you're good.
Okay, all right. So slowly on, what happened was, my fellow commissioners stopped going, and because it started to get more and more, it's started to swing more and more to the right. Okay, and over, since then, it's just so there isn't. So the last maybe 2 years ago, there was maybe 2 out of 11 commissioners. There was maybe 2 that were going anymore because it just we were a voice that wasn't being listened to at all. I mean, the moderate voice in Ottawa County Republican Party was no longer being listened to at all. It was the takeover of the party is what I call it. The stolen party.
Okay, yeah. So a taking over, in your opinion, a stealing. And this is for both, whoever wants to, address this too. Like, can you define a little bit? So, Roger, you're saying, and Becky, checking the Republican box and being, more moderate or centrist, but then, you are using language that says, the party is moving a little more right, whether it's nationally or locally. And so perhaps like locally, can you define what you mean in this, like it's moving more right? What does that mean to you? Like what examples would you tell folks about that it's making that move, and why that might be, in your opinion, negative?
Roger, do you want to start this one or do you want me to jump in?
Sure. I'll start this one. So I think, when religion, and when I say religion, this nationalistic Christianity started to take hold, and people started to use scripture out of context to weaponize, so to speak. They started to weaponize their religion to justify some of the things that we're talking about, some of the things that they were advocating for. And it, as a moderate, and I'm a Christian, okay? So, but as a moderate, I understand that we represent all of Ottawa County, not just white Christians. And what I was seeing was more and more this leaning towards, we want to get back to the days of Father knows best, leave it to Beaver, all those, and people actually were talking about those kinds of things. Worse, I had an email from somebody that said exactly that. They wanted to get back to those days. It's like, it's, and you get this feeling that, if you are a white person and a Christian, you're with us. If you're not, we'll tolerate you, but we really would rather you weren't here.
Mm-hmm. So
now it's Becky's turn. She's shaking her head.
I
Yeah,
agree
go ahead, Becky.
wholeheartedly. Kind of from a big picture, I agree wholeheartedly. We're here to represent the white Christians, and we like white Christian men to be the voice of that leadership. And that's our mission. That's our goal. I think another piece of that, from my perspective, both nationally and locally, is kind of this idea that we want, that we, the Republican leadership, wants to be the only voice in the heads of our voters. We don't want our voters doing a lot of reading. We don't want them doing a lot of learning. We don't want them to be people who believe in science because climate change isn't real. We don't want them to be people who learn and read about issues like systemic racism, because we're here to represent the white Christian perspective. My struggles over the last 7 years with the Republican Party, and they grow increasingly. And Nick and I have had conversations about this, like how hard it is for me, honestly, to like put the word Republican with my own face and name anymore, because it feels like you can't be a Republican and also be a scientist. You can't be a Republican and also be a public school teacher, because we just know that all public school teachers are teaching critical race theory to all of our students. I say that super sarcastically. Please don't like take it out of context.
Sarcasm noted.
But I think that my struggle with the Republican Party, kind of on a platform and philosophical direction kind of mindset, is that they want you to stay in the lane of white Christian nationalism, in the name of patriotism and all of these things that are important. But when those things are at odds with what the scientific community is saying, or when those things are at odds through the pandemic with what the medical community is saying, or when those things are at odds with what our experts in fields like diversity are saying, then we're supposed to put our head in the sand and not listen to any of those experts and just stick with the party narrative. And that's really challenging for me. I think that super locally, an example is library books, right? I love, as an elected trustee in Georgetown Township, I love our public library. We recently built a new, big, beautiful facility for library. We have a library director who I just think is the most amazing human. Conservative, Christian, like really good people, kind of leadership of our library. And as a moderate Republican, I feel like that's what I want for our community, right? I want leadership related to literacy for our community, and leadership related to all of the library's resources and services that reflect who I think our community is at the core, which is Republican, Christian, conservative. I mean, like, that is a lot of our community. And so to me, it like, from a leadership standpoint, it felt like we were doing a really good job. But as the Republican Party has gotten more far right, which, Nick, I think was your question, is like, where is that happening? As the Republican Party has gotten more far right, it isn't enough that we're filling our library with great literature and resources to meet the needs of our community, that our leadership is very mindful of who our community is, and choosing things, to kind of meet the needs of our community. But then the far right pieces of our party want to go through and censor the stuff that's in our library, and want to remove anything that doesn't align with their views. And that, to me, is where we go from like this conservative party of Republicans to far right. I really struggle to align myself with that, because we as leaders are leaders of all of our township, even the people who don't look like us, even the people who don't vote like us, even the people who don't love like us. We're leaders of the entire community. And so I'm proud when our library has items in it that aren't things that I would choose, and that maybe aren't things that I would want my children to choose, but that are there to meet the needs of other readers in our community that don't look like me, or don't believe like me, or don't vote like me. But the far right members of the party and of our township board want to have all of those resources just removed from the library. If I don't love them, no one can have them. And that idea of, if it doesn't match me, no one can have it, is, to me, where the Republican kind of, where we used to be, has gone off the wayside, and where it has become a party that I struggle to put my name with anymore. Because I think it all kind of wraps in my head back to this idea that we maybe the far right Republicans maybe just don't want our people to do a lot of reading and learning and personal growth. We want them to kind of stay on the track that has been laid out for them, and that maybe reflects what their parents and grandparents believed, and not stray from that. So sorry, I rambled a lot, but that's where I'm at.
You're good.
So I just want to
go ahead, Roger.
If I can interject. So just when she started talking, when Becky started talking, I thought it started to my heart started beating faster. My blood pressure went up, because I thought, what really ticks me off is when I said earlier that they stole our party. The Republican Party is not the Republican Party.
Yeah.
This is not the Republic. They're the rhinos They call us the rhinos. They're the rhinos. They stole. This isn't the Republican Party. When I grew up, I consider myself a Jerry Ford Republican. Okay, somebody that was moderate, that was willing to work with anyone. Okay,
Me too.
that's,
Yes.
that's the Republican Party. These people are not Republicans. They are far out. They might be calling themselves Patriots or Ottawa Impact. Now they call themselves America First. They are not Republicans. And we need to get back to the real Republican Party. I don't know if we can do it. That's the challenge. So Becky, how can we get back to the real Republican Party? That's the question. Because when last year, I know I'm rambling here, but last year when I went and knocked on doors, I knocked on doors and I found out from my voting list that there were more independents in much of my district than there were Republicans and Democrats combined. Because
I think a piece of that is moderates like you and me don't want to associate themselves with the name Republican anymore, and so they are dropping it and turning themselves into independents, right? I'm not as wackadoo as over there.
I still had to run as a Republican because otherwise I wouldn't have made it. I still made it as a Republican because in my situation, I had a lot of, I'm well known, but there was a lot of people that crossed over from that were D's and independents that voted for me. And that's the reason I'm the only one that won. Everyone else lost.
Yeah. So there's this clear distinction of what's been happening with the Republican Party. There's a fracture and people kind of saying, hey, we want to be this, whether we continue to call it the Republican Party or not, or like people like yourselves are saying, hey, we're the Republicans, we want to proceed in this way, and then the term rhinos going back and forth. Shawn,
yep.
So Shawn's been a more recent Republican voter. Do you have like any kind of thoughts or questions on what they've said about this kind of fracture, or where the party might be going?
I think they pretty much nailed it on everyone kind of looking at being more of an independent voter opposed to being one or the other. Because I think everybody's just so tired of it being so far one way or so far the other way that I think the real community doesn't want to have to pick.
They don't want either side.
Yeah.
They don't want either side, right?
So, when Becky, correct?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. When you were talking about how it's gotten so far right, I was starting to think and wonder, like, does it seem like the far left and the far right kind of keep going far left and far right in response to each other? Are this one's going a little further that way, so now we got to push harder the other way, and it seems like they've almost lost the forest for the trees on everything that they're doing.
Could be. What do you think, Becky?
I don't know. I think that a lot of it boils down to national leadership of the party and the direction that they're setting. Because I think that when we have somebody who's so polarizing like Trump, then people who have that kind of patriotic, super proud to be a Republican, just see in him some hero worship and all those pieces and start echoing the message. And so I think that it has to do with people that are playing on the national scene, that are getting a lot of airtime, but also kind of that social media space, right, that they occupy, and a lot of strategic messaging and a lot of strategic branding. I think that they can go far right for shock factor, but then it doesn't just stop at shock factor, because all of, their kind of base becomes echo chambers of the shock factor messages. And so I do think that there's some polarizing, like, oh, they went further right, so now we need to go further left, because the shock factor messaging works, right? So if the Republicans are saying super conservative things and are getting a ton of airtime, then it kind of falls on the Democrats to see if they can play in the same arena, because they're competing for airspace and column inches and all of those things. Which is just unfortunate. I think that the kind of voting public I would say that the bulk of the voting public is still kind of existing in this slightly left of center or slightly right of center kind of mass. But it reminds me of that scene. Forgive me, I'm raising toddlers, okay? But it reminds me of that scene in Finding Nemo, where the fish are all caught in this big net and they're all freaking out and nothing's happening, and they're going to get scooped up by the big boat unless they all swim together in the same direction. And I think that there's a lot of power. I'm thinking locally now about something like Ottawa Impact. They are effective because they were well funded, but they were also on message 100% of the time with their matching color schemes on their signs and their matching fonts. And they were this machine. And so it doesn't matter that that machine is a minority in Ottawa County, because that machine was like the big net scooping up all the fish. That machine was what people were getting behind, where you can have thousands of really good fish in the sea, but if Becky and her fish are swimming over here and Roger and his fish are swimming over here, and we're all just trying to be moderate and do the best we can, that doesn't have the same power of a big net like Ottawa Impact, right? That is just scooping up everybody in the area with their attractive signs and their and their kind of seductive messaging and all of those pieces that scoops in a lot of pieces. So finding ways for Roger's moderates and for my moderates, and for people across the aisle on the Democrat side to find their own way to swim in the same direction and to be just as enticing to the voting base, is a huge challenge for people like Roger and I that never guessed we would get into politics, that never necessarily had that as a career goal, but found ourselves in a situation. I'm speaking for you, Roger, but for me, I felt like I had a voice and I needed to use it for good. I didn't want to be a politician. I'm a public school teacher. That's, besides my family, that's my top priority. But if I have a voice, I want to try to use it for good. And not like a political machine. I'm not being strategic in my messaging. I'm not trying to rally voters behind me. I'm not worried about what font and color scheme is on my campaign sign, because I haven't signed a pledge to some big machine, to some big net that's scooping up voters. I just want to do me and do me well. So
yeah. Well, Becky, I think so. So you used a pretty good analogy in terms of this big net or scooping up voters, and any organization, and in our case, Ottawa Impact, coming up with a really nice and clean platform to rally voters around and organize. I wonder though, so in the circles that you travel politically, and then even perhaps within your faith circles, is the idea locally of a moderate or centrist Republican a unicorn idea? Is it just that there's just folks who just want to move further to the right because that's what the party is doing nationally? Or when you talk with folks, how many people are yeah, I love what you're saying, a bunch of my friends are saying the same things? Or is it just wishful thinking, a unicorn? Roger?
Well, my district's a little unusual. It's not like Georgetown, Jenison. I get people stopping me on the street all the time and stopping their cars when I'm out walking. Or yesterday I was doing sidewalk sale. A number of people walked up to me and just say, hang in there, Roger, you're doing a good job. don't let it get you down, all this kind of stuff, that are very 100% supportive of what's happening, of what I'm doing. What I can't do is much, right? But I'm their figurehead, so to speak, okay, for Northwest, for normal people, okay. And the challenge is that I've got a year and a half to go yet, and there's not a whole lot that I can do. Doug Zylstra and I are working hard to derail some of this stuff, but when they've got 9 votes against us 2, and often it is 9-2, even though sometimes people have referred to it's a 5-6. That's not very often that it's 5-6.
Mm-hmm. And just for context, sorry, Roger, just for context for our listener and for Shawn, perhaps, it's like, so Ottawa Impact, they were elected in 2022 to the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners, and they came in having a majority of the board. The board is 11 seats, and then they hold the majority. So when Roger, he was the lone one of the lone Republicans, to maintain his seat as an incumbent. And then so when he references Doug Zylstra is a commissioner, but he's a Democrat. So the majority of the board right now is Ottawa Impact, where they are able to just make decisions because they can. Right. But then so Roger's working with a Democrat.
Yes.
Just on paper, that's what the contact is. So sorry, Roger. Just wanted to lay it out.
That's all right. And the challenge is that I've got these people that are supporting me. But they understand that for the next year and a half, there's a lot of damage that they can do, and they're doing it. And every time I think, well, they can't possibly do any more, there's another thing that's going to come up on Monday and Tuesday of this coming week, and it's just it's one thing after another. And I served 10 years on the board. That was a normal board. We had the best run county in the state of Michigan. Now, I would say that if we aren't the worst, we're one of the worst run counties. We have an administrator with 0 county administration experience, and he just hired somebody basically to do his job because he doesn't know how to do it. He hired somebody that has 0 experience in county government, and it's disgusting. It's and there's nothing we can do about it. That's what is so frustrating. But I know I'm going off on tangents here, but you can tell I'm a little frustrated about this whole process. And when Becky talks about she never wanted to be in politics, I never wanted to be in politics, and here I am 23 years later.
Yeah. So I wonder, I'm going to kick this question to you, Shawn. I mean, clearly a lot of the frustration is, and we're hearing it from, locally elected officials. And I know that, some of this, we've talked about this personally. I mean, when they talk about their frustration, how does that hit you? Is that kind of like hitting home, or is it, how does that operate for you?
It does hit home a little bit. I'm not as into the politics nearly as obviously you guys are. This is still a new field that I'm kind of just dipping my toe into and everything. But like I was saying earlier, it just feels like everybody's kind of losing their grip on what things are, and everybody that's kind of a little left or a little right's getting lost in in the minutia of what news media and social media and everything wants to push out there in regards to either way. So I completely can relate with what they're talking about there and everything.
Mm-hmm. So what would be kind of a way moving forward? Shawn and I, we were just joking before we started to record. I was like, the question I posed earlier. Okay, so tell me why you first elected to run as a Republican. Well, the opposite of that is like, well, why did you choose then to not be a Democrat? So I'm asking, like, I don't think the way forward for folks is to, all right, you need to then be a Democrat. I personally think that a two-party system, or a political system that involves multiple parties is good, so we can have a pull and tug of ideas, something that's more progressive, something that's a little more conservative, so we can listen to each other, this tug and pull. So what would you think is the way moving forward in this, in terms of, like, maybe when it comes to party affiliation, or, I would just say, like, I would love to have Republicans just be better Republicans. What's your take on that?
That's like saying people should just be better people.
Yeah, just do better, damn it.
just be better, do better.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think, go ahead.
Go ahead, Becky.
I think, Nick, you asked earlier, like, is it a unicorn candidate, right? Like somebody that is not far right, but that is a Republican. And I think that the problem there is that the Republican Party is far right. The Republican Party locally is far right. The Republican Party nationally is far right. And it is hard for someone who, like Roger and I, never necessarily wanted to be a politician, but we have a voice and we have beliefs, and we see a moderate amount, like that moderate kind of center of our community, and we want to represent them. In order for those candidates to run, they are going to have to be brave enough to run within their own party against the far right machine. And so every time a candidate, or every time a potential candidate that has a belief set like Roger and I considers getting into the conversation, you know immediately what you're going to be up against. You're not only going to be up against the Democrats because we're in a two-party system and people look at what letters next to your name first, or what side of the ballot your name falls on. That's an automatic part of kind of living in the American society with a two-party system. But you also have to fight within your own party to even, like, get on the ballot. I mean,
Right.
that's the piece that's really challenging. That's the conversation that my husband and I have every time that I have to start thinking about if I'm going to run for re-election or not, is my voice doesn't have the support of the Ottawa County Republican Party. The Ottawa County Republican Party isn't knocking on my door and saying, "Hey, Becky, you're doing such a great job in Georgetown Township. Have you considered running for county commission, or have you considered running for state rep?" They don't, the Ottawa County Republican Party isn't looking for somebody like me that thinks we shouldn't be censoring books in the library. They aren't looking for a candidate like me who says, "I'm pro-life," but that doesn't just mean anti-abortion. That means, like, pro the lives of everybody, even people who don't look like me and believe like me and vote like me. But, like, I just want us to treat everybody with love and compassion. They don't want a candidate like me. And so that's the piece that's really challenging. It is a unicorn candidate, because not only do they have to have a voice that they want to use, not only do they have to have enough name recognition that they could get elected, but they have to be willing to fight off in a primary the Ottawa Impact machine to get their names on the ballot. And then they have to be enticing enough to, of course, pull the Republican votes, but also have some Democrats like them too, in case a well-funded Democrat wanted to run. It's a unicorn to find somebody who has that in them, to represent the moderate votes. I've been pretty open in saying that, like, it's really hard for me to identify as a Republican anymore. And that very much stands in the way of my desire to run again in 2024, because it's a lot. And then what I hear on the street, and what I hear from friends and colleagues and people in the community, and from my my faith community, is, "But Becky, if not you, then who?" And That's absolutely true. If not me, then who? Because I know what I would be wishing on another candidate. And it's a really tall, stressful order to be placing in front of somebody to say, yes, represent the moderate voices. Yes, your party isn't going to really want to support you. In fact, there's other people in the party that are going to run against you and are going to say a lot of hateful things. And that's just to get through an August primary. Then you also have to run again in November. It's just a really tall order. And so until there is some sort of a support system, until there's some sort of a network, until the party stops leaning so far right that it is an impossible task, I don't know how we're going to break this cycle of far right versus left, which I think that they're still doing an okay job staying kind of moderate within their belief system. But far right versus left, and then there's these centrist people that aren't really being represented anymore that are just kind of grinning and bearing it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Roger, do you know of any unicorns in your neck of the woods?
Well, I've got two quick things. I'll just say, first of all, that we tried through the legislature to get county boards to be nonpartisan, because there is absolutely no reason for them to be partisan. And it's the same thing with township boards, should not be partisan either. City councils aren't partisan. They don't, or I guess in the bigger cities they are, but in most smaller cities they are not partisan. It doesn't need to be partisan. We don't do anything partisan. You know, we don't do moral issues. We don't do things like that. The second thing I want to say is that a couple times I've met with some Democrats, progressive Democrats in Northwest Ottawa County, and they invited me to come and talk to them, and I've talked to them about the election and going forward. How do we go forward? Because the goal needs to be a common goal. They need to understand that whether it's a Democrat or Republican, it needs to be a moderate to win, because the majority of people in Northwest Ottawa County, and even in District 9, for instance, or District 1 and 2, there are more moderates than anything else, and we need to win. We need to get moderate candidate. We need to get Ottawa Impact people out. Mm-hmm. That ought to be our goal. And I'm trying to get people that are Democrats, that are progressives, that helped me win the last time. I'm trying to get them to understand that they need to help me come up with candidates who can win. This is a Republican county. And, granted that, Grand Haven might be more Democratic today, but the District 10 is made up of Ferrysburg, Spring Lake Township, and they're definitely much more Republican, and they're going to vote Republican. And so in order to win and make a change, we need to get someone elected that can win. So getting that message out to some of the progressive Democrats is what I'm working on. And I'm also working on coming up with candidates to run in a couple of the in District 10 and 9. I'm not running again. I've done this for, this will be 24 years for me, and I'm, I don't want to be on the board in my 80s, because the next time it's a 4-year term, and I don't want to do a President Biden or
I'm glad you said it. I was thinking it.
Well, so
I don't want to do a Trump or a Biden thing.
Roger,
be in my 80s.
Roger, we consider this program a news program, so I think we just broke news here. Is that breaking news? You are not running for re-election and
No, I've told people before.
you've told people.
It's not breaking
Right. We thought we really had
sorry.
it. Well, we can kind of
No,
frame it
no,
as that.
no.
We can say, hey, this is happening. But we don't want to be part of
That'll be the
fake
thumbnail
news,
for
right?
the entire episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
Roger quits.
No.
Shawn, do you have any questions as we kind of begin to conclude this conversation?
Well, the only thing that was kind of poking around in my head a little bit was with everything being pushed so far right, left, and everything. Do you think some of that got pushed going those ways just with the Fox News and the CNNs and the way they've covered all their politics and everything? You know,
yeah, the media, you know, and the challenge, and I wrote this down, but I forgot to mention it. The challenge today is you can tell lies, and if you tell lies often enough, people believe them. And I don't care what news media you're watching is your favorite. Folks, you know, you can tell sometimes from the demeanor of a reporter, right? Of one of the correspondents. You can tell when they bring the news, they're not neutral, right? Just the way they bring the news out. So whether it's CNN or Fox, I don't watch any of those. It's, you know, they're telling lies a lot of time or half truths. And
Roger, where do you get your news?
Where do I get my news?
Yeah, where do you get your news?
He
Becky,
makes
then
the
you can
news.
answer
He
that
makes
question
the
too. I'm
news.
wondering where some of our locally elected officials get their news.
I watch just my local news, you know, Channel 8, Channel 13, and I switch between the two. And, you know, I'll switch between the national news channels. And if I discern that, you know, a particular announcer is, you know, telling half truths or something like that, I can recognize that, you know, or I'll watch or I'll switch to a different channel or whatever. But
Yeah.
I don't do CNN. I don't do any of those things.
Becky?
I similarly, I switch back and forth between Channel 8 and Channel 13. I like the Today
Good for
Show.
you, Becky.
I like the Today Show. I like the personalities on the Today Show. So I end up watching the Channel 8 local news, waiting for the Today Show to come on while I'm getting ready to walk out the door in the morning. And nationally, you know, I try to consume news from lots of different sources. But like Roger, you know, you get a reporter that you know has an angle that they're trying to drive, and then you avoid that, because I want that kind of more centrist, more realistic. But I absolutely agree with what Roger said, is that people can tell a lie, and as long as you tell it often enough, people will amplify the message and believe that it's the truth. And I certainly think that things like Fox News have played into it, but I also think that the shutdown nature of the pandemic played into it a lot, where the majority of the information people were consuming was from social media, because it wasn't well fact-checked, and you could have a lie and you could get that message amplified tremendously. And as long as you try, as long as candidates, as long as the far right or the far left, but like try to support the amplification of untruths, with a similar message of like denying things, like denying what scientists are saying and trying to discredit what the medical community is saying. As long as you're pairing amplified lies with this culture of like, resist what the scientists are saying, resist what the medical community is saying, then you can amplify untruths with a lot of power. because the people are shut down to science, they're shut down to the medical community, they're only listening to the lies, and they're doing that in a shut-in kind of pandemic state. I think that was a huge turning point that groups like Ottawa Impact saw and capitalized on, right? None of us like being shut in. None of us like being shut down, but you could listen to the medical experts about why we're doing it, and put trust in the expertise of those communities, or you could listen to amplified opinions and put your trust that it was all bad, and that people are trying to brainwash us. And so I think that the pandemic really rocked the political landscape, and that some different voices really took advantage of that.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, what happened to my local Republican Party? That's what we've been talking about. And we've had 2 elected officials giving voice to that. And I think that's really important, locally, to know that, hey, I'm not alone in my views when I'm thinking about these things. And there are people who are in leadership positions, being willing to speak out about these things and wanting to do politics in a better way, and within the structure of the party, because once again, like we need different ideas. My take is that we just need to put these ideas together towards what we would hear.
Just need to start having more open discussions without attacking one another.
And that's a great idea.
It's hard to find that sometimes nowadays. You open up your mouth on one thing and somebody else goes, whoa, no. It's like, well, if you're shutting me down right away, there's no need to have a discussion, because you're not going to listen anyhow.
Yeah. And so hopefully we can provide that platform here on the podcast. So Roger and Becky, we thank you for your time. Roger, we know that you have to go back to your sidewalk sale and get things going, pay the bills. Becky, you got to get back to your little one.
I'm gonna pack up the family and hit up Roger's sidewalk sales. That sounds like a great way to spend a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, well, we appreciate your time this afternoon, and we'll do it again. So all you got to do is click out of the meeting, and you'll be good.
Thank you.
All right.
See you next time.
All right. Thanks.
Shawn, where are you getting your news?
In particular, just everybody I talk to, mainly.
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth, just discussions with other people that I have that in the community, and people that I trust and talk to and everything like that.
Mm-hmm. Where are they getting their news?
If I'm not looking actively for news, YouTube and Facebook just says, hey, look at this. That's the part that I don't like all that much either. Is it's just if you're not actively looking for news yourself, the media outlets will put the news in front of you. What they want you to see, they're going to put there in your, whether you want it there or not.
Yeah, and then what is
all
it?
These algorithms and everything.
Yeah, so then based upon your viewing habits and stuff, like what is it kicking to you? Like what types of?
Oh, YouTube kicks me all sorts of Fox clippets and whatnot. If it's news oriented, most of the time it's all music and guitar stuff for me. But if I spend 1 minute where I type in something that has to do with CNN or Fox or Tucker Carlson or anything like that, oh man, a whole list starts getting thrown in the algorithm of things you should check out. And even if I'm trying to be like, looking up something specifically on like CNN, and next thing will come up, Fox News reports CNN lies on Scandalgate or something like that. Well, no, I was looking for something from that specific network, not from this network reporting on that network, and it's all convoluted, and it's hard to keep it all. They're all snippets. Even when I heard rumors that Tucker Carlson, gave a shellacking to the the Republicans that were trying to run for 2024. And I think it was his podcast, or he was the mediator for the whole thing, for a debate, which Trump wasn't there for. but I guess he gave a shellacking to a lot of the Republicans that are running on their answers, because he was looking for more than just the canned answers. He was looking for a real discussion on questions, apparently. So I heard about that. I tried to look it up, and all I could find were clickbait pieces, you know? So it's hard sometimes to find the news because there's so much out there and so many ways that they want you to see the clickbait small thing, you know, and not many people have the time to sit there and actually read through, you know, a full article either.
Yeah. And I think that's the underlying point. It's like people don't have a lot of time to find the news in a really good way. So, you know, things like Facebook or YouTube or even like your Google, like these algorithms, they will work to find you the things that you like, right? So then you'll kind of,
or it thinks you like,
right. So you'll get news like you mentioned, and it kind of creates this silo. So it does, like what I've learned is that like it you have to be very intentional about where you get your news. So like this all kind of started for me with clicking on to one particular like newsletter that I get every morning. Heather Cox Richardson, a historian. She started during the pandemic. She started doing this really succinct synopsis of what's happening with the news currently, but she kind of frames it then in this historical context.
Yeah.
But she was providing then all these different links to the site so you could find it out. And they were coming from various sources, but all that to say is like you have to be really intentional. So like if I read, you know, news from the New York Times, which I do, I have to also make sure that I'm not just reading the New York Times.
Yeah.
I have to try to find another voice within there. So, you know, I'll read the Holland Sentinel, which is I believed owned by USA Today.
Yep.
You know, and I've tried to participate in more conservative, you know, news circles by, you know, listening in or you know, reading articles from the Guardian or the Epoch or you know, Fox News, just to get a feel for what's going on.
Well, what I found really interesting was when Biden was coming into office and Trump was leaving office, you know, he's getting on his helicopter or whatever and flying away that day. I was switching between CNN and Fox while he was boarding his helicopter or whatever. And it's like you clicked on Fox and he's like, oh, there he goes, all the you know, ooh, it's Trump, and they're talking disappointment that he lost and he's on his way out of the you know, out of the White House and everything. And then clip it over to CNN and good riddance, he's gone. And the way that they phrased either side, you know, on live reporting at the exact same time, just seeing how they covered it from one to the other, you know, seeing how one it was 100% behind Trump and making it sound real sad that he's leaving and that, you know, the future's going to be terrible because Biden's in the office, and the other one, the complete other direction, just waving bye to Trump and good riddance, that we're glad he's gone. We're going to have so much better with, you know, now that we got Democrats in the office and stuff. And just to be able to see the white and the black and white of it in real time was real interesting and sad at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, so I mean, just that example of a CNN and a Fox, that's a whole other discussion, and we won't get in that today.
No.
So let's wrap things up here. Man, we got this episode down. Looking forward to do the next one. We don't know what it is yet. I'm working on it, so you can look forward to being surprised in a couple weeks. So
and we're gonna try to put these podcasts out every, you know, two a month, like every other week,
2 a month.
Like
that's the goal.
Okay, so, you know, any listeners should be able to hit the subscribe button on whatever app they're listening to our podcast on and everything.
Yeah, and it should be out on all
up.
the places that you can get your podcast. So, all right, friends, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Thanks.